Hello and welcome to Industry Spotlight with Creative First. Our guest today is Ashish Firvani, Partner Media and Entertainment EY India. Ashish has been associated with the media and entertainment industry for over 2 decades and has been associated with over 50 media companies across broadcasting, television distribution, radio, content production, out of home, mobile, events, print, and gaming. He has written several articles on the Indian media sector and has released white papers on the TV, print, digital, radio events, and out of home segments. He authors the annual FICCI EY Media and Entertainment Sector Report since the last 7 years. He's a chartered accountant from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and a certified internal systems auditor from the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. Ashish, welcome to this discussion.
And great to be here, Lohita. Looking forward to this chat.
Ashish, how do you assess the current landscape of the media and entertainment industry in India, and what trends do you believe will dominate the next few years?
Media, the sector now, as per our estimates, has reached about 2.3 trillion rupees, right? That's about 2,30,000 crores. But when you put it in perspective, it is not even 1% of India's GDP. So it's still an extremely, extremely small sector. When you convert that into USD, it's even more fun, right? 2.3 lakh crores becomes roughly 27, billion US dollars, which kind of equates with what, say, a Disney or a Netflix spends on content creation every year. So you can see that while it's a vast industry, it pulls a lot above its weight in terms of mind space. It's actually a very, very chotu, small little industry that we have. But it's a very interesting industry. It tends to grow faster than GDP, and I've been tracking this for like 20 years now. And typically, if India's GDP grows more than 4%, this will grow at least at 1.5 times that. Except for last year. Last year was the first year where the Indian economy grew at 9% GDP, but the sector grew at just 8%. And I think the reason for that is we had a lot of private equity money drying up because of concerns on profitability. We had a war going on in the world, two wars going on. So global supply chains got a bit impacted. So there were a number of extraneous factors that actually led to this sector not growing as much. But that's the first time in a very, very long time that's happened. I hope to see that correct. In fact, our estimates are that next year we should again be double-digit growth in the sector. So I'm looking forward to how India plays out on its media plans.
Digital transformation has been pivotal in the media sector. How do you see digital platforms evolving, and what impact will they have on traditional media?
So digital is very simply a function of the digital infrastructure that we have. And that's something that's just exploding. As in, I read the paper today, and between Jio and Airtel, there's now 175 million 5G consumers which are active in India. Then we have more than 800 million broadband subscriptions in this country. We have 38 million wired broadband households in the country. So the digital infra has come in space. But I think the standout number for me is that by 2030, we expect about 1 billion screens in India that are going to be active. And 3/4 of that, 750 million, will be small screens. And a quarter, that's 250 odd million, will be large screens. And therefore, I think the future is definitely going to be increasingly digital. And the kind of content that will come out is going to change. The way the content is consumed, where it's consumed, all that stuff is going to change. And I think you're going to see a lot more integration between physical and traditional going forward, because all physical media will have a digital extension and digital media will start having physical extension. So it's a very interesting future with a lot more integration than ever before that we can expect.
With changing content consumption patterns, especially among the younger demographic, how should media companies adapt their content strategy?
So I think great question, and something which most of them are working on right now as we speak. I think the future is going to be two multis. It's going to be multi-format and it's going to be multi-device. So whatever content that you as a content producer are creating has to be compatible with all devices, large screens, small screens, theatrical screens. It has to be compatible with all kinds of devices. It has to be all kinds of formats, because as the demand for content consumption and the consumption patterns are changing, your content needs to transcend. Now, just putting it very simply, Today, in a world where you have more than half the time spent on a mobile phone on social media, can a content creator not have his content on a social media? The answer is obviously no. You need some content on social media platforms. Similarly, India still sells 900 million or whatever, cinema tickets. That's not a small number, though our penetration is still low. I mean, it's still a big number and has so much scope to grow. So there is a theatrical market as well. So it's all about creating different experiences for everyone, and that experience could be across a TV screen, a laptop, a mobile, or even the 2-inch small geo phone screens that you have. But it's just going to be a market that's going to consume at their convenience, and we need to be ready for that.
The monetization models in this industry are continuously evolving. What models do you see as most sustainable for content creators and distributors?
So I think I'm going to start that answer off by saying, as an industry, we are starting to not think any longer as silos. All right. There's a very interesting piece we've put in the FICCI report, which is called the horizontalization of the industry, where we said even a radio company today is producing video, has text on its website, of course, has audio, and is doing events. So we've broken the entire industry down into video, audio, text, and experiential. And video today is about 63 odd percent, if I remember correctly, of the total revenue. And it's followed by experiential because that's more exciting. Gaming is growing. Events is growing a lot. Cinema, going to the cinema is a great experience. Out of the home is out, growing in every possible manner, both in metros, non-metros. So I think how a company thinks of itself no longer is siloed to say I'm a print company or I'm a TV company. It's now all multimedia, right? And because of that, the models evolve in terms of monetization. So we are seeing three key models coming up, which I believe will drive the future. The first is going to be a very heavy focus on ad supported. This is not some great intelligent thing. It's just the way India is. We've always had an ad predominant marketplace, right? With you look at the last 50 years, it's always been advertising that's been disproportionately higher than subscription. And now with digital consumption, the ability to serve segmented advertising has just gone up manifold. And therefore, I think ad models will continuously evolve on fast channels, on social media, on e-commerce platforms. I think advertising is going to change completely. The other one really is that we are looking at transactions. Again, something that the FMCG industry has taught us very well. That people don't buy a big 2-liter shampoo pack, but they're very, very willing to buy sachets. I think media is going to follow a sachet strategy on transactions. Rent a movie, buy a series, right? I think a lot more of that is going to come about as well. And finally, for the top end, of course, subscription products are going to be there. So you're going to have the Amazons and the Netflixes and the Hotstars and the Geo Cinemas with a segmented top end subscription product. And that is going to provide very high quality 4K, 8K, top sporting events, niche sporting events like basketball or chess or whatever. And there are subscription models at small scale available there. So I think it's going to be a mix of a lot of factors, but I think the big issue is getting your model right, ensuring your customer acquisition costs are limited and your lifetime value is maximized of the customer and churn is minimized. I think that's going to be the three most important metrics on a revenue point of view going forward.
What innovations or technologies do you believe will significantly impact the media and entertainment industry in the near future?
So I think it's just to summarize, there's one on the monetization side, one on the content side. On the content side, it's all about how content can move. And like I said, it's all pieces of content need to be now created in a multi-format, multi-device manner. And everything around that to ensure that they don't take up too much data, they move seamlessly, the experience is good. I think that kind of innovation is going to be extremely important as we move towards the 1 billion screens that I was talking about by 2030. On the monetization side, I think the single most important factor is going to be cross-platform attribution. To say that an advertiser today is buying an audience, some of it may be on free TV, some may be on linear TV, some may be on connected TV, some may be on social media, some may be on OTT app on my phone. But it's all the audience that he wants, right? How do you demonstrate to an advertiser all the people who watched it? How do you make sure you're targeting the right people across? And therefore, this cross-platform measurement of advertising and serving of advertising, I think that's going to be the other big area in terms of revenue maximization.
What are your views on AI, as a technology to drive both, content preferences and monetization?
So if you see any of my reports that we release, it's full of AI imagery. I love AI. Um, we have done a bit of a study on AI from a media perspective. And our belief is that AI within the next 3 years can add about 45,000 crores to this industry over the 3 year period, more than half of which will come from a cost reduction aspect. So, for example, an advertising creative person is not going to completely be replaced by AI, but he'll use AI to create quick storyboards to show the clients, right? Or create quick mock-ups, and therefore, it's more a tool of which will enable the creative industry, in my mind, rather than replace it. And therefore how we use it, creating collages, montages, etc., of different images, creating background scores, all kinds of stuff, very very useful in my mind. We will see a lot of action across music, across text and news, especially on video content in a little while. And one of the big disruptors will be just dubbing and subtitling. How can you take content and really sweat it out in different languages? So I think you're going to see a lot of benefits coming from an AI point of view.
Based on the report's findings, what are the most significant challenges media and entertainment companies face in implementing innovative strategies?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the number one thing is getting the model right. Right. Today, there's a number of examples where there's very high cost content being produced for some OTT platforms, and they're trying to monetize that through advertising. I don't see models like that working. And therefore, I feel the future is going to be about how these models align to business realities and consumption realities, especially on the demand side. What are people willing to pay? When are they willing to pay? How much are they willing to pay? So I believe that the key change that will happen is that the cost of content will get rationalized in a pretty big way. All right, you're going to see a lot of TV cost plus content coming onto OTT, and not necessarily something that costs 10 or 20 times, the cost of content on TV. And that will help models get rationalized significantly. The other change I think that really will a lot will be done on is managing churn. Today, a lot of segments, especially news, they're unregistered users, there's transient traffic. People see a clipping on social media and then use that to get to the website of the news company, and then they're gone. And we don't have data. And now with the cookieless world potentially coming up very soon, we'll have no consumer data. So as media companies, traditional media companies or even native media companies, when you go to advertisers and say, I have 10 million people coming whatever every month to my platform, they'll say, okay, tell me the guys who are planning a trip. Nobody will know anything, right? And therefore, I think the big challenge is how do you get, how do you manage churn? How do you get consumer data so that you can really be efficient when you're talking to advertisers? Because those are the guys who have that consumer data that's going to manage, and therefore the data strategy becomes, in my mind, the third part of the puzzle after churn. Saying how do you get the right data? And finally, something I know you're also very passionate about, just like me, piracy. I think the minute prices start going up, the tendency is for piracy to increase as well. And I think we need to do a lot more in curbing that right now than ever before. So I think we manage these four areas: the model, the churn, the piracy bit, and data. I think those are the four big challenges in my mind.
Ashish, you've really seen the transformation of the screen industry. And, what are your views on how the theatrical piece will evolve?
So I have a view
Also, we are
which
also an under-screen market. We also went through pandemic. There's a whole confusion. People are thinking, okay, I'll watch it at home. So, what are your views on this?
so I have a slightly different view from everyone else on this one. We are under screen, but not in the way you make it out to be. All right. Right now, we have content being produced for a certain target audience, right? And that target audience is just the top 100 million odd people in the country out of 1.4 billion, right? Those are the number of people who enter a cinema hall. And they're the ones who can afford it, right? Now, what if we want to increase that 100 million to, say, another 100 million, right? I think that's going to require a whole new set of screens and a whole new set of content, right? Because this content may not resonate with the next level. And therefore, my point of view is yes, we're under screened because our content is very focused on a certain mass audience or a certain genre or or, or target audience set. And what I therefore think is that if we really want to grow cinema in the country from 100 million to 200 or 300 million, we need much more content of a different type, and we need far less expensive theatrical experiences, so that more and more people come in and can enjoy that event over there. Because at the end of the day, theater is competing with OTT and TV, which are priced way, way below. So if that has to grow, we've got to make an event for which the family should be willing to go and pay and really enjoy a differentiated product. So that amount of differentiation is going to be so important if we want to grow the cinema industry. Is there scope? 100%. Are we creating the differentiation? I think we're starting to see some moves in that direction, but I still think it'll take 5, 7 years more before a second tier of theaters and content will really gain shape.
How does India's media and entertainment sector's approach to innovation compare with global trends?
You know, 6, 8 years back, I would say we were nowhere. Today, I'll say we're actually at par with the best in the world in terms of innovation. We created the large scale advertising models before the West did because they were such subscription based models out there largely. Well, we were always focused on advertising. The ability to serve ads to tens of millions of concurrent users is so difficult, right? And I think that's where we are really innovating and inventing very well. Just the number of people, watching cricket concurrently, 50, 60 million people now we are hearing of, right? Almost none of the international companies has the ability to handle just that kind of scale. So again, India is innovating, with the best ahead of the pack, so to speak, in that. The world talks of dubbing and subtitling. You know what? India's been doing that for the last 20 years, right? Because we've always been 10, 20 languages in this country. And therefore, we've kind of mastered the art of that. Low cost animation, something the world is again grappling with. We've been doing that for the last 15 years, right? Because we just can't afford the high cost animation that's actually happening. And even today, we are one of the largest in the world in 2D animation, right? Similarly, VFX. So I think that we have a lot of IP actually from a media industry point of view today. I think the Indian industry should be looking at how it can export that IP, how it can become, a source for the rest of the world to take advantage, how we should export our creative capabilities and also our tech creative capabilities and take all this up to the world. We need to think big. We need to think make in India now on this.
Looking forward, how do you envision the role of India in the global media and entertainment industry? And what steps should industry stakeholders take to ensure a leading position on the world stage?
Yeah. I think let's break it down into two parts. One is I believe India can become the content back office of the world. Here I'm saying this that everything behind the camera, editing, VFX, post production, animation. I think now with the AVGC policy also coming into place from the government of India, the 30% incentives for Make in India, you will see a massive movement towards all the back end processes coming out to India. Just like the Infosys and Accentures and Wipros of the world created huge capability sets in India to become the tech back office. I think now's the time for India to become the media back office of the world as well. And I think the second part really is that I think we have created some of the best products on an OTT side, whether it's entertainment, sports, news, social, right? I think there's a huge scope for India to white label all this tech and really become mass producers of content platforms for a number of countries across the world. Indian content is already going to over 150 countries in terms of exports. I think our platform capabilities can also start getting exported to many, many countries. We will probably be one of the best, and if it works on Indian networks, which are not amongst the, top 10 speeded networks in the world, the experience for consumers still being good. I think that's something there's a lot of potential for as well. So all our capabilities getting packaged and taken to the world, that's really what I think is good for us.
Lastly, as per the report, how do you really see this year going into the next, till we see the next report, of course?
So it's going to be a very interesting year. There's a number of positive and negative factors. On the positive side, of course, is the additional spend that the elections should give. I would say way more than 1,000 crores will come into the industry this year just from election ad spends. On the other hand, being an election year, a lot of funds get distributed to the public. So consumption at the bottom of the pyramid will also grow. So I think it'll be a great year from an FMCG point of view, a two-wheeler point of view. Auto is doing great, pharma is doing great. So a lot of sectors are working well. I think the big need is really, for the industry to figure out when the D2C brands will come back in mass. Right, a lot of them slowed down their spending last year as they moved budgets from brand building to performance. I think that's going to be the key determinant of how this year will work out from an ad point of view. On the subscription side, we're seeing a lot more fast products and free products, including cricket. So I think advertising revenues will certainly grow on digital as well. I don't see any hindrance on that side. But I think SVOD will need a rethink on OTT side. We'll need to create great product, differentiated products, and I think a lot more aggregation of bundles, just like the Hathaways and the Tata Plays aggregated content from different studios. I think that role now needs to come into digital as well. A lot more aggregation will perhaps define the next year or two on the OTT side. So overall, I would stick by my estimate of around a 10% growth again this year. As of now, we're early days yet, but as of now, I think we're pretty much on track.
Thank you so much for this discussion, Ashish. It has been wonderful, and I'm sure our viewers will learn a lot about our industry.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.